If you're new to the sport of F1 racing, then you'll probably be thrown off by the typical race weekend format, as well as the vernacular that the announcers and journalists will use. Compared to Indy and NASCAR, Formula One is the youngest of the three, and just like teenagers nowadays, they have to come up with their own language in an attempt to make everyone else feel inadequate. In this episode, we'll discuss the vocabulary, rules of engagement, flags, and scoring. And as usual, I'll try to spice things up with my own take on everything in an effort to make sure you're not lost and having to Google shit during the races. This is the Made in America F1 Racing Podcast.
Welcome to the F1 Racing Podcast, the only podcast that has the guts to give it to you straight. So grab a clean pair of racing panties, because this American-made podcast will surely make you shit yourself. Here's your host, Billy Simpson.
Well, welcome to the F1 Racing Podcast. I'm your host, Billy Simpson, and I used to practice my cuss words in the bathtub when I was only 5 years old. Why am I telling you this? I was told that it was a good attention getter by a improv teacher that I had one time. So you tell me if it worked. Hopefully you're still listening. Today, in this episode, we're going to be talking about some of the vocabulary and the race weekend festivities to make sure that you're not completely lost on race weekend. So, if you're an experienced Formula One race fan and don't think this episode will interest you much, stay tuned and listen anyways, because you might just learn something or at least, get a chuckle. By the end of this episode, you should be able to carry on a decent conversation with other F1 racing fans, whether in person or on social media. Before we jump in to start talking about the rules and shit, let's take a quick break to acknowledge our sponsors.
Well, Billy, today we're sponsored by no one. Because you're a dirty loser.
All right then, Sally. Thanks for the confidence boost. Let's just jump right in today. We'll start with the vocabulary and some of the general terms. The first term we'll go over is Grand Prix, or you might hear on TV, Grand Prix. Basically, Grand Prix is the overall name of a race. You'll hear on TV, they'll say, this is the U.S. Grand Prix, or this is the Bahrain Grand Prix, the Spanish Grand Prix. So basically, it's just the race. The next word is circuit. Circuit is really just the racetrack. And each racetrack has its own name. It's not just named after the city like Bahrain. There's, an actual name to the track, which I can't remember right now. But to describe it, they'll talk about this is taking place on a 2.3 mile circuit. So just remember, circuit is the racetrack. Another term you'll hear is paddock. These are really the team's garages. It's basically each team's home base at a circuit or a racetrack. This is a little interesting fact I learned from that Netflix Drive to Survive documentary series. Garages are actually arranged based on success of the teams from the previous year, from best to worst. So if your team did not finish well last year, then your team has to walk the length of the paddock. Think of it as a walk of shame of sorts. Next term, chicane. Chicanes are tight sequences of corners. But while watching the race, I really feel like this is a term used more often than not when describing corners in general. The next term is livery. And no, it's not a word to describe the aftertaste of cunnilingus or fellatio. This actually describes the paint job and the sponsored design and colors and placement and of the team drivers' names on the car. So that's the livery there. Next, we'll move on to more of racing terms. First one is grid. The grid is the formation of starting positions in rows of two. And this grid is determined by qualifying results. So however they qualify based on their time, or if it is a sprint race, we'll go over that a little bit later, that's where they will start on the grid for the race itself. When the race is starting, they have what's called a formation lap. This is the warm-up lap intended to help get temperature into the tires so that the tires will grip better. You'll see a lot of people swerving from left to right as they're on their formation lap. You'll also hear lights go out. So when the lights go out, that's really the start of the race from a standstill. There's 5 red lights that turn on one at a time, and when they all go off simultaneously, the race begins. The next term you'll hear is sitting on pole or pole sitter. And no, this has nothing to do with sodomy. It simply means first place. So just remember that. P1, where the driver is in relation to other drivers. So you'll hear, good job, Hamilton, P1, or, P2, which the P stands for position. So position 1, position 2, on up through, position 20. There's 20 cars. You'll also hear, and these are terms related to cars while they're racing. You'll hear the term dirty, turbulent air, which is not related to flatulence. As a car, so think of it as when a car drives, it punches a hole through the air. And the air that comes off the back of that car is called dirty air because it affects the performance of the following cars, mainly in corners, because on straight lines, that following a car actually helps, which is the next term is a slipstream. They also refer to it as getting a tow. On straightaways, as I was mentioning, cars that follow closely to the car in front will have less wind resistance, and as a result, will gain a little bit more speed to help them catch that car in front. The next term is, and you'll always hear this on the radio from the pit crew, it's called box, box. So when they say box, box, this basically means make a pit stop. So pretty simple there. A more complex term is called DRS, which stands for drag reduction system. You'll hear them say, Hamilton has DRS. When a car is within 1 second of the car in front of them, they're able to use this DRS. So this drag reduction system is a fin that's located in the rear wing that when enabled, it lifts, basically. So it reduces that wind resistance, allowing the car to travel around 12 miles per hour faster. So it's a crucial part of the race, and you can only do that on most tracks a couple of times throughout the whole, throughout one lap there. So it's an interesting aspect to the race itself. The next things you'll hear at the very beginning of all the races, they'll talk about tire compounds. And tire compounds are what the rubber is made of and how long it lasts. There's some terminology around that. There's the C5 through to the C1. Now, so those 5 tire compounds are provided by Pirelli, which is the main tire sponsor for Formula One. It is the only tire sponsor for Formula One. All cars use Pirelli tires. And like I was saying, the C5 through the C1. The C5 is the softest tire, and it's usually the fastest, but it doesn't last as long. During any race, Pirelli will select 3 compounds, and it'll be in sequential order. So, for example, let's say they're using the tire compounds of C5 through C3. C5, like I mentioned before, is going to be the softest tire, and it's going to have red striping around the edges of the tire itself, so you'll be able to see that. C4 is going to be the medium with yellow stripe around the edges there, and then C3 will be the hard white striped tire. So it's going to be soft, medium, and hard. Soft is going to be faster, but it's not going to last as long. Whereas hard is going to be not as fast, but it's going to last a lot longer, so you don't have to make as many pit stops. Now, all of these tires, the C5 through the C1, are slick tires. So there's no grip, there's no treads at all. There's grip, but there's just no treads. And in addition to these racing slicks, there's also 2 other types of tires that are only used in rainy, wet conditions. And those tires will have tread on them. And there's two of those. One of them is called intermediate, and the other is called wet tires. The intermediate tires are used when there's some moisture on the track, but wet tires are used when it's raining and the track is completely wet. So that covers tire compounds. Next, we'll talk about KERS, or Kinetic Energy Recovery System. And they won't usually say KERS, or they won't say Kinetic Energy Recovery System. What they'll say is the driver is charging their battery. So on the cars themselves, when you see the red light blinking on the back of the car, that's not a brake light. It means that the battery is charging the power unit. And this kinetic energy recovery system will give the car more speed. So you'll see, you can't always have the kinetic charge, right? So you'll see them, those lights will be blinking red. That means they're charging up kinetic, getting ready to make a move on another driver there. Another note to the KERS, or Kinetic Energy Recovery System. This is a green technology that when the unit is fully charged, it will add 60 kilowatts, which equates to 80 horsepower to the car. So it can be very beneficial. So if you think, I'll just backtrack. If you think about a car that has a fully charged battery, is following straight in the slipstream of the car in front of them, and they have DRS that's going to give them another 12 miles per hour of speed, then they have more of an advantage to pass the car in front of them. Now, once they pass that car in front of them, the car right behind them immediately will be within 1 second, so they'll get DRS as well, but they'll have to make sure that their battery is charged, right? So it's very interesting. It's an interesting concept in F1. You'll also hear the terms one-stop or two-stop strategy. This is related to the pit stops. All cars are required to race two different tire compounds in a race. So we were just talking about the compounds, whether it's a soft, a medium, or a hard. If a car only makes one pit stop, it's called a one-stop strategy. So like I said, though, they have to race two different compounds. So it's pretty interesting there when it comes to the pit stop strategies and which tires you're going to use, and is it longer lasting? Is it not going to last as long? Is it going to give you speed? So it really is a chess match. So it's pretty interesting. The next thing you'll hear, and I was talking about this on the formation lap, is getting temperature into the tires. This means driving on your tires in order to warm them up so that they get better traction for faster speed and handling. So as I had mentioned earlier, in the formation lap, you'll see cars swerving from left to right. And that's really just to get that temperature into the tires so that they're faster and get better grip around the corners. The next term you'll hear is related to steering, and it's called understeering or oversteering, right? So oversteer is what occurs when your car turns, or steers by more than the amount that the driver turned it, right? So if I just turn it a little bit and it turns more than I expected, that means there's a setting going on within the computer. Because, these cars are completely computer driven. They're so technologically advanced. So if you turn it a little bit and it turns too much, then that's oversteer. If you turn it a lot and it's barely turning, that's understeer. So you'll hear that from the announcers as well. The next term you'll hear is the undercut. And this is a strategy when one team makes a pit stop before the other team in order to get fresher tires and hopefully gain position on the track. So you hear that quite a bit throughout the race. After a driver makes a pit stop, there's a term that they'll use. It's called the outlap, and you'll see it on TV as well. This is the first lap after a car makes a pit stop, basically. So you'll hear, oh, this driver is on their outlap. So that's basically, they just made their pit stop, so they're on their outlap. Another term you'll hear is apex. The tactic is, apex is talking about the cornering and the corners and how you hit those corners. You've probably heard this term, but I'm just going to go into a little bit more description. So the tactic is to hit the apex of a corner perfectly so that the driver can maintain maximum speed through a corner. A new term that I've begun to hear this year is the porpoising effect. And the porpoising is really just bouncing of the car due to new regulations and the car sitting lower to that ground. The porpoising effect and the bouncing will actually bring your tires slightly off the surface of the road, slowing it down. So porpoising is not good. You don't want to have the porpoising effect. So they're still working on a lot of that, as I've seen through practice and qualifying here. Another term that I had learned is the Floviz. Floviz is really just neon green paint applied to the front wing so that the engineers can see how the wind rolls off the wing, because these cars are very aerodynamic. They're basically like planes, right? The downforces, which I'm going to get into in just a second, are created by the wind and the aerodynamics of these cars. So the Floviz is that neon green paint. Very interesting. Lots of science to this. I was blown away when I first saw that. Next term, underbraking. Underbraking is taking a corner too fast and basically locking up the tires. And when this happens, it causes a flat spot on the tires, which is not good for traction because it's burnt rubber off of there. So it makes an uneven surface on those tires. So the more and more lockups will cause the tire to lock up and slide on that exact same flat spot. So you keep doing that and you're liable to get a puncture. And then you're really screwed because you've got a flat tire, right? So you always want to avoid the underbraking and skidding. And you'll see the smoke come up off the tires too when this happens. The next term is downforce. And this is the aerodynamic force, and I was mentioning it earlier, that is applied in a downwards direction as a car travels forward. And it's harnessed to really improve the car's traction and its handling through the corners. So that downforce is very important. Another term you'll hear there. Now let's talk about the referees. The first one you'll hear is a race director. And think of this as the head referee when you're thinking about American football, right? And they're responsible for talking to team managers during the race and communicating to those team managers, and you'll hear them all the time. And their primary goal is to keep safe racing conditions. Okay, so that's the race director. Then you have stewards, which are other referees, not the head referee. But these referees, it's a panel of people who interpret the F1 rule book and review incidents to decide if and what penalty should be handed down to drivers who are breaking those rules. Then you have the marshals. And those are the people who wave the flags and are responsible for clearing debris from the track. The next term you'll hear, and this is all kind of related to the referees, is the safety car, or you'll see a sign flashing VSC. That's the virtual safety car. So there's safety car and then there's virtual safety car. This is another word for pace car, basically, or the car that leads the other cars during a caution flag. If a driver runs off track or debris is on that track, a virtual safety car is deployed. There isn't an actual car, it's just a flashing sign, and all drivers can see it. Under a virtual safety car, all drivers cannot pass and must reduce their speed to 30% of normal speed. So just remember, safety car means, hey, there's a driver in the middle of the road, there's a caution out, and they'll call it a caution. And then a virtual safety car is an actual car that is leading the pack. A virtual safety car is not a real car. It's a given rule that a driver must adhere to, right? So now we talked about the vocabulary, which is the boring stuff. Sorry, I had to go into it though, because there's a lot of people that don't know the vocabulary. I was lost at first, and I was stuck Googling shit the whole time. So, just wanted to put that out there. Next, let's talk about a normal race weekend when there's actual qualifying. And this year there are 23 races, and there are 20 races that actually have qualifying, and this is the normal race weekend, right? So on Friday, you'll have what's called free practice 1 and free practice 2, or they'll call it FP1, FP2. And each of those practices are going to be an hour each. Now, during each of these practices, they will basically take anywhere from 15 to 25 laps. Just kind of tune in the car to the racing conditions, to the track, to, upgrades that they made to the car from last week, those sorts of things. On Saturday, there is FP3, which is the free practice 3, and qualifying. And the qualifying will determine the starting position, as I mentioned earlier, for the grid. And again, FP3 and qualifying are separated by time, but they're both 1 hour each. Okay. And I'm going to go into some of the details about qualifying here in just a minute. I just kind of want to give you the overview of a typical race weekend. On Sunday, you have your race day, and that's 2 hours of racing, rain or shine. Only a handful of times have I seen a race completely canceled because it's just too dangerous for drivers to be driving in that. So it's very rare that a race will get canceled, but it does happen. And like I say, race day, 2 hours. So just to recap, Friday, free practice 1, free practice 2. Saturday, free practice 3 and qualifying. And then Sunday is race day. The sprint race format is a little different from a normal qualifying weekend. On Friday, you have your practice 1, which is an hour. Then they get a break. Then you go into the qualifying for that sprint race later that afternoon. On Saturday, you have another practice, and then the actual sprint qualifying for the race on Sunday. During the sprint qualifying race, they'll usually race about 24 laps, and that will determine the grid positions for race day on Sunday. There's only 3 sprint race weekends in 2022. The first one will be in Italy, the second will be in Austria, and the third will be in Brazil. Out of 23 races, there's only 3 sprint races. And really, the sprint race is put in place to garner more spectator excitement to come to the track and spend money on beer and funnel cakes and shit, right? And they do these sprint races because spectators don't really give a hot fuck about watching practice, which is when teams are running programs and shit. So that's really why they do the sprint races. Now let's talk about pit stops. So a normal pit stop will usually take around 26 seconds, and that includes those 2 to 4 seconds for the team to change those tires. Therefore, this is kind of where the chess match begins, because if a driver in front is 20 seconds ahead of the second place driver, if they pit and then the second place driver does not pit, then that second place driver will actually take the lead. And this is where the chess match begins. So it's very interesting, and the pit stops make and break all of these races. You'll soon find out. Now let's talk about scoring points. When you're scoring points, not only do you get points during qualifying or sprint races, but you also get them to the actual race, right? As you would expect. When you're qualifying, the top 8 people out of the top 10 that will actually qualify and get to Q3 will get points. So first place will get 8 points, second place will get 7 points, third place will get 6 points, 4 will get 5, 5 will get 4, 6th will get 3, 7th will get 2, 8th will get 1 point. So that's qualifying. Race scoring, the top 10 will actually get points here. First place, and this is where all the big points come in. First place will get 26 points. Second place will get 18 points. Third gets 15 points. Fourth will get 12. Fifth will get 10. Sixth will get 8. Seventh will get 6. Eighth place will get 4. Ninth will get 2 points. And then 10th place will get 1 point. Now there's also fastest lap point that will be awarded to the driver that has the fastest lap during the whole race. As I said before, all races are going to take place rain or shine, but in the off chance that races are shortened, usually due to horrible weather, if there are at least 2 green flag laps, raced, then there's some convoluted shit with scoring that happens. And I'm not going to cover that here, but you can Google it. Or if you want to be a smartass to your friends or enemies, this is kind of a funny thing one of my college professors told me about. There's a website called lmgtfy.com, and that stands for Let Me Google That For You.com. And you can actually type in letmegooglethatforyou.com and Google will give that to you. You type in let me Google that for you if somebody asks you a dumb question like, what's the scoring like in Formula One? Or what's the weather like today? You go to letmegooglethatforyou.com, type that in, and what it does is it will show a mouse going to the search box, and then it shows someone typing in, what is the weather like, or whatever the question was. And then it will show the mouse going to search, and then it will actually bring up the Google results. So it's really just a video clip that you send to someone to show them, hey, just go Google that shit, bitch. So as we keep talking about scoring, sidetrack there, finally at the end of the year, there's 2 major awards that are based on these points that everyone gets. There's the World Champion, that is awarded to a single driver with the most points. And then you have the Constructors Champion, which is awarded to a team with the most points. And this is the big one, right? Because the teams are awarded hundreds of millions of dollars, whereas the World Champion, it's really bragging rights, and they do get bonuses and everything. These guys are millionaires anyways, but it's really the Constructors Champion that gets teams all the money. So that's the big races. And then, World Champion is bragging rights. The last thing we'll talk about today are the flags. There are 11 different flags that may be waved, but you usually only see a handful during a race. The top ones you could see are double yellow, green, and red. Those are the ones you'll see most of the time. Double yellow means there's a dumbass in the middle of the road and all the drivers must slow down, and passing is not allowed during a double yellow, and usually will result in a safety car leading all the other cars. A single yellow means that there's stuff in the road and all drivers must reduce their speed, and there's no passing allowed. And this usually will result in a virtual safety car, the VSC, flashing, as I mentioned earlier. The next one is green flag. This means go fast, bitch, because it's normal racing conditions. So that's just normal flag, right? This is what they wave at the beginning of the race. A red flag means that the session is suspended and all drivers need to return to the pit. Usually red is when something pretty serious happens. The blue flag means that you suck and you need to move to the side because you're about to be lapped by another car. There's the yellow with red stripes flag, which means that the track is slippery, so just proceed with caution. Then you have the black with orange circle, which means your car has a mechanical issue and must return to the pit. Another flag is the black and white flag, and this is a warning to drivers, and it means that you're being a dick and you're being warned for unsportsmanlike conduct. Then you have the actual black flag, and that means you're disqualified, asshole. Get off the track. No points for you. The white flag, typically in other racing sports, means something different. But in F1, it means that there are slower vehicles on the track or miscellaneous vehicles on the track. The checkered flag means that the race is over and you won all the glory. In conclusion, there's a lot of shit to learn, and it can be hard to follow when you don't know what the hell they're talking about, but don't worry about all that. Just jump right in and begin watching some races, and it will begin to sink in and come to you naturally. And if not, just start playing a drinking game when you take a drink when there's a team that comes up and a term that comes up and you don't know, or you could just Google it, but I prefer to drink. And that about does it for today's F1 Racing Podcast. I'd like to thank my sponsors, or should I say beg anyone with the courage to sponsor this amazing podcast in the future. And to everyone listening to this, yes, that means you. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast, share it with all your friends and enemies, and follow me on Facebook and Twitter at F1 Racing Podcast. And give me a shining review on iTunes while you're at it so I can be the pole sitter of F1 Racing Podcasts. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you next time.
You've been listening to the F1 Racing Podcast. Tune in next time to see what Billy will say next.